Welcome to Public House, intimate conversations with people making a difference in the Hudson Valley. And now, from Paula's Public House in Poughkeepsie, New York, here's Paula Young.
Hi and welcome to Public House. This is Paula Young here and with Marcus Molinaro yet again. We are always on the road with Marcus Molinaro at his offices. Good morning, Marcus. How are you?
It's good to see you back here.
It's good to see you always. So let's talk again about some of the interesting things that's been going on here in Dutchess County.
Sure.
Most recently, I understand that liquor stores have been given the permission to stay open instead of 7 until 9 and on major holidays.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about that?
You know, it's funny. New York State still has this post-prohibition era set of regulations. So counties are given the ability to kind of create the parameters for hours of operation, and the legislature moved forward, our legislature moved forward, to authorize liquor stores to stay open later. In this case, till 9 p.m., as you mentioned. One of the problems was most of the liquor stores didn't know it and didn't know about it, and in fact, many of them had some objection, as did a number of residents. So my position remains the same. I think the state overregulates the industry. In fact, they make it very difficult. It's almost monopolistic for some of these liquor stores to function, and despite the fact they might be open longer, they may not see that much extra revenue, so to speak, and the revenue they might get may not necessarily be what they want. There's a certain area within Dutchess, particularly in the southern corner, Beacon being principally
Beacon being the main, from what I understand, was the main spearheader of this.
Yeah, and understandably, rightfully so. Beacon has a transient population, principally now. Both, there's longtime Beacon residents, but a lot more are commuting into the city and back. And their perspective is they come back on the train and they miss the opportunity to go out and get their bottle of wine and go out to a friend's house for dinner, whatever it is, or make a purchase. There's legitimate. I can understand why the businesses in Beacon feel that way. Then there's other parts of the county where we have a liquor store in a residential neighborhood. In fact, there are several liquor stores in residential neighborhoods, and the residents in that neighborhood, at least deserve an opportunity of knowing this was going to change, like a zoning law change,
Absolutely.
and then comment on it. So the legislature moved forward. You know this. I vetoed the first pass at it because I don't think there was adequate public participation. As far as I can tell, there has been adequate public participation. Letters, communications. You were at the legislature last night when they considered it. They overrode the veto, and now the state liquor authority has to make a determination. I mean, I believe the county should be left, or local municipalities should be left to make these kinds of decisions anyway, but that's where we are today.
Southern Dutchess, Beacon specifically, and a wine shop more specifically that sells only wine and not tequila, vodka, scotch. So I would say, having owned a restaurant and many restaurants and a wine bar and now a full service alcohol restaurant, there's a difference between Tito's vodka and a bottle of Chardonnay.
There is a
so
significant
everyone
difference.
was talking about, I want to get off the train and buy a bottle of wine. But what happens if it's 8:45 and they want to buy 6 bottles of whiskey?
Yeah.
And it brings, especially for communities like Poughkeepsie, city of Poughkeepsie, a different element to storekeepers who are perhaps afraid of the crime, the element being open later, more vulnerable to robbery.
Yeah.
Those were the concerns that I heard from the shop owners.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the shop owners are going to have to make a determination as to what makes sense for them. But because the state overregulates, if they stay closed, they could lose business. If they stay open, they may not gain enough business, and that's a very difficult decision for some. You know this. I was mayor of a college town, mayor of Tivoli, New York. 1,300 residents. A third of our population were college kids, college students. Would I have a concern about a liquor store being open a little bit later? Yeah. I mean, we saw what we had bars are open to 4 a.m. It can be open to 4 a.m. in Dutchess County, and we know what happens later into the night. So there's a balance that has to occur.
Nothing good happens after 11 p.m., right?
Well, I used to say nothing good happens after 1 a.m. I'll give these college kids enough.
Oh, okay, all right.
but at the end of the day, the restaurants and businesses are going to have to make that determination. My concern was, and still remains, the community should also have a right to be a part of that decision making. So again, in Tivoli, using our example, the restaurants could be open till 4. But a planning and zoning process at least allowed public comment for the public neighbors to come in and say, being open to 4 is a little bit late. Now, we couldn't restrict them, but at the very least, we could have that conversation. And this gets to what my concern is all the time when it comes to policy decisions. Every month we're approving things in the county legislature, most of which don't have an immediate or direct impact, and some are sort of considered in broad budget, public hearings, et cetera. But every so often, the legislature makes a decision that does have a specific impact, and that impact should be discussed. There should be, there should be open comment. There should be formal effort to get public participation. And I'd even challenge the legislature. And by the way, obviously they're a majority of my political party, but I challenge them to do more, to have workshops and sort of engage the public. Because you said this before we went on to camera, and I think it's a way to kind of wrap up today this segment, which is we have to do more to engage the public, not just those who have self-interests or personal interests, which are fine in public process. As long as you're not the elected official, you're allowed to have self-interest. But we have to include more in the dialogue. And what we've done since I've been county executive is more to reach out into the community. Over 100 town hall meetings. We changed our website to be more inclusive. We use social media to engage. In fact, as I said to you, I personally engage back and forth in social media. The public needs to know that their elected officials are not only listening, but learning and considering and respecting the opinions of the public.
I'm going to go back to this, though.
Yeah.
It was for time immemorial that Dutchess County liquor stores and wine shops closed at 7. So Beacon all of a sudden has an influx of people from Manhattan. And those are the people that spoke to this wine shop, and they're the ones, again, that were the tip of the spear to get this passed. One small community now impacts an entire county. I don't know how that makes sense, and I don't know how the legislators voted for it. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Well, so what I know is this. I would say about half of the shop owners in Dutchess County expressed support. So that's first. It wasn't limited. And then within the mix are those who just say, listen, I don't have competition across the street, so if you change the hours to 9 o'clock, I just won't be open. I met with a few shop owners in Red Hook and Rhinebeck who don't necessarily want to be open later.
Right, well, this is not a mandation. They can choose whether they
Correct,
want to
which
or
is
not.
why they then say, well, I don't need to have a strong opinion. I can make that decision. Some live in a very competitive place where if the liquor store down the street stays open till 9, they feel they have to stay open till 9. The other is, and again, we're not getting into the detail, but the state over-regulates. So buying liquor is monopolistic. These businesses don't have a lot of profit margins. Yes, they can only get from certain
supply
You know this
companies,
from
yes.
as a restaurant owner.
Yes.
So those limitations create a lot of conflicts. But I would say that Beacon, this isn't new. Fishkill and Beacon have made this request several times over the last several years, and the county has asked the state of New York to allow home rule, meaning allow municipalities to make those decisions so that we don't have a county-wide fix. By the way, we let municipalities decide the height of fences. We let them decide
Right.
whether or not a factory can be next to a school, can be next to a liquor store, can be next
Right.
to a church. We let them make those decisions.
Right.
In New York, when it comes to liquor stores, we don't let them make any of those decisions. And in fact, this over-regulated process bubbles up from
Because
them.
it makes sense that it should be neighborhood to neighborhood, town
Yeah.
to town, as opposed to be countywide.
And then communities get to define their master plan, their vision for their development plan, and then we support that. That's the way it ought to be. But this industry, because of prohibition and because of pre-prohibition regulation, has never been given that kind of free market. I heard the comments, right? Legislators saying, well, this, we're a free market society and we should be deregulating this industry. That's all well and good, but you didn't do that, because we don't have the right to do that.
Exactly.
New York is over-regulating the industry. All of that said, my opinion is communities should make those decisions in the best interest of their communities. I can tell you the liquor store in a residential neighborhood, I don't think should be open terribly late. It's not my decision to make. It should be the local community making that decision with the property owners, taxpayers, and residents.
I think that your comment that people need to be more involved
Yeah.
is true. Like I always say, it's always the same 6 mothers that run the bake sale for the baseball team. How do you think we're going to get people more engaged in things that affect their life? I understand that being able to buy a bottle of wine might be real specific, but how do you think you can get people to be interested in everything that's going on in the community? Because it does impact them.
We can, but you have to saturate them with information. I mean, I mean this. We have held over 100 town hall meetings since I became county executive, and we get from 5 to 100 people at a town hall meeting, depending on topics. When we went forward with the transition center and jail project, we had hundreds of people participate. It's a matter of just being out there and actually doing it. I loved actually the interaction that occurred when I vetoed this legislation. Because people came at me and said, well, I disagree with you. Great. And then we began a dialogue.
Right, correct.
Where those said, you're right, but why wouldn't you be stronger and firmer? Because it's not my right to do that. It's my responsibility to sort of set the example and then let the legislature make that decision. But we turned it into a dialogue, and I think that's critical. And I think too many elected officials hide from the public.
I agree, because you know what? You can disagree with me, and we have disagreed.
Yes.
But we also can converse as two intelligent, respectful adults and come to some understanding.
Yes. I mean, think about this. I just spoke to a graduating class a few days ago, and I said to them, over 240 years ago, these old white men, admittedly old white men, or middle-aged white men, got together.
240 years ago, that was the majority of people who in power.
True, but they got together in Philadelphia, and they were radical. They were progressives.
Oh, yes,
they were resisting. They argued. They fought.
Yes.
But you know what they didn't do? They didn't punch each other. They didn't. In Philadelphia, they didn't kill each other when they made that debate. Ultimately,
except for Burr.
Well, okay. Well, that's an extreme example.
Yeah,
One out of many.
Never mind.
But my point being is they engaged in probably the most heated, sort of governmental debate in the history of modern man, right? And we still were able to figure out a way to proceed.
And create a country.
And create a country in the process.
Anyhow, we have to stop. I'm so sorry to say.
Okay.
We will be doing this yet again with Marcus Molinaro. If you have any questions that you'd like me to ask the county executive, please let me know. And thank you for watching. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paula Young, and I'm the proprietor here of Paula's Public House. Do join me for good food, good cheer, and good fellowship. We are here, we have fun, and we'd love to have you be a part of it. Come on down.